Okay.
Welcome Wargamers, this is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and today we are taking a review of the Kharadron Overlords Start Collecting box. A lot of controversy around this one about its value and stuff like that, so what we're going to do is our normal Start Collecting box review, where we go unit by unit and figuring out how these fit into an army, ask if it's a good place to start, what the value is, and really just dig in deep into what you get. And on that note, let's review what comes in this box. You get 1 Endrin Master, 5 Grunt Stock Thunderers, 3 Sky-Duardins, which could also be built as Endrin Ringers, and those are the floating guys with the big ball tethered to them. And the big ship, the centerpiece of the set, is the Grunt Stock Gun Hauler. So kind of stepping back and just kind of doing a look of the things that you actually get, this is a beautiful set of models. Absolutely through and through. It's often criticized for not having a battle line unit, and there's several articles online, is this the worst of the Start Collecting boxes because of that kind of stuff? The fact of the matter is, you get an amazing set of models of a wide variety of units, and all of them kind of exemplify the theme of what this army is trying to convey. That steampunk, Duardin, ship, floating, a lot of things that fly, that kind of stuff. And also be aware that on the front of the box it says Start Collecting, not Start a Matched Play Army. I know it's important for some of us who play Matched Play pretty regularly, of which I am one. However, understand that for a new hobbyist, someone who just walks into a game store and is looking for what catches their eye, that's not what they're worried about. What we can all be worried about is the savings you get in money. Did the math here, and in US dollars, it's $155 worth of models for $85, which is almost 50% off. So before we talk about good value and stuff like that, let's just take a beat and think about that for a second. There we go, rant over. Like I said, you do get a nice variety of types of models. You do get a hero, you get 5 ground troops armed to the teeth with guns, you get 3 of the kind of fly guys, and also 1 ship, and all of those things really typify what this army is. We're going to talk at the end whether or not it's a great starter set, so just kind of stick with me for that. But for right now, we're going to go unit by unit and see what exactly they do to fit into a KO army. Starting off with the Endrin Master, this is the hero you get. And his profile is 6 wounds on a 4-up save, which is not bad for such a small little hero. But one thing you'll notice is he is painfully slow. 4-inch movement, which is going to be a reoccurring theme for pretty much all Duardin. And his weapon profiles are pretty darn good. He's got a gun and a hammer. Gun is a 3-up, 2-up. Hammer is a 3-up, 3-up. This is to hit and wound is what I'm saying those things for. And they both have a rend of 1 and damage of D3, so he can get in there and mingle a little bit, making him an impressive little fighter. Important note that most Chaos champions can't sport that kind of a stat line. It's actually fairly good. And it's actually well balanced for a new player. Now he does also have 2 unique abilities. One is Endrin Craft. Heal a sky vessel in 3 inches or one that they're embarked upon. And you heal that thing for D3 wounds. Now what's great about this is it's a passive ability. You don't have to use a command ability or anything like that. No resources are being lost by doing it. If he's on a ship, that ship just heals. If he's near one, it just heals, and that's great. And he also has the supercharged harness, and basically you roll a die. I don't know when you take a mortal wound, but on a 3-up, the damage characteristic of the hammer, instead of being D3, it is just straight 3. Essentially what you're saying is you're going to take a risk now for more reliable damage later, instead of just rolling for it and having the risk of doing very little damage later on. One thing important to note about that ability is that it says the characteristic is changed until the end of the phase, not the end of the turn. So say you have your turn, you overcharge the harness and you smash him for 3 damage. When it's your opponent's turn and he's tagging you back so you get to activate your units that are in combat, it goes back to D3 because this is a different combat phase than the one you activated it in. Whereas most abilities only expire when it comes up to your next hero phase or something like that, this one ends that exact phase. Now the biggest detriment to this guy, and I will be honest, is that he doesn't have a command ability. Of course, he can always use Inspiring Presence like any hero can, if selected to be a general. But he doesn't add that kind of special flavor and punch to these units that you usually see in these Start Collecting boxes. That being said, he's a support hero with minor buffs to ships. He gets in there and he mingles with the enemy. And he does combat fairly well. He's not exceptional at it, but he's pretty good. He can hold his own for a turn or two. And frankly, that's all there really is to him. He doesn't offer a lot of bonuses for other units. Even the passive ability of being able to heal a ship when he's in it. You can't get into the gun hauler. It has no ability to carry people, so it only works on that ship if he's near it. But moving on to kind of your basic unit you get in the box is the Grunt Stock Thunderverse. And these actually have a very similar profile. 4-inch move, 4-up save, they only have 1 wound each. But they have a ton of weapon options, and it can be very overwhelming for new folks. To put it really simply, you get 5 guys you can build, and there are 5 weapon options. There's 1 base one, which everyone can take, and there's 4 unique. Each guy can take that. So you could have, ether shot rifle is the basic weapon, and they can have 5 guys who have ether shot rifles. Or you can mix it up and stuff like that, where you have 1 rifle and then 4 of the unique weapons, or any combination thereof. However, you only get 1 of each of the unique weapon options. And I think it's important not to overlook the basic rifle. Okay, it has 18-inch range, 2 attacks, 3 for the leader, 3 up, 4 up, rend 1, damage 1. Okay, that's actually a solid gun line, especially with some of the buffs that you can mix in later on. And all the other weapon options have basically just tweaks to that profile, increasing things like rend or to hit or to wound rolls, damage rolls, things like that. Nothing's terribly prolific. What is important to note is that all of them have a range less than the ether shot rifle, going anywhere between 9 and 12 inches versus the rifle's 18. And I know certain players are very partial to some of those particular weapon options, but for the sake of keeping things simple for a new player, I would say do what looks cool. We're going to rule cool on this one. The one that has a 9-inch range, maybe not the greatest choice, simply because you have to get shooting units so close to the enemy, but just do whatever you like for this first set of units. Keep in mind, like I said, don't overlook the basic gun. And these guys also have some really cool abilities. They have an Honor Bearer, which is kind of like a flag holder for any other type unit, and he allows them to re-roll Battle Shock tests, which is great. And they can also take a little bird named Drillbit. And Drillbit's awesome. If an enemy ends a charge within 1 inch, you roll a die, and on a 2-up, it takes a mortal wound. Keep in mind, there's no cost to him additional to the unit, so there's no reason not to take him. The next ability is called Keep Your Distance, and with this, basically, when they're chosen to do a melee attack in the combat phase, they can use that time to retreat instead of fight. And the only real rule that you're given is you can't get into a ship as part of that action. So if you need to keep this unit alive, if it's your turn and you need to select a unit to fight, choose them first. Have them duck out of combat. These are guys who don't want to be in melee. Shooting is their primary strength. You'll be removing a target from your enemy, so that's great to take those kinds of things away. This just requires a little extra thought when it comes to activation order during the combat phase. And they do have a few other special rules, but they all apply to the individual weapon options. And I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty like that. Again, this is more reviewing the set as a whole and how it fits into the army and introducing people rather than individual weapon choices, because as we've seen from the General's Handbook, options change over time. There was a time where you could take as many of each of these as you wanted, but they kind of retconned that to being 1 of each. Some important things to keep in mind, though, is that when you're choosing how to equip a unit, just kind of keep in mind what you want it to actually do. If you want something to kind of sit back and camp on objectives while securing them, the rifle's a great choice because it has the longest range. If you eventually want to focus on having ships take your guys up real close and personal, then range is less of an issue and you can focus on other weapon profiles. Regardless, this is a largely static shooting unit. With a 4-inch move, they're not going to get anywhere in a hurry, so you need to plan for either having a ship that can bring them to the action, or just decide that they're not going to be a part of the main fight, have them sit back on an objective and defend it and shoot enemies from afar. Now the next unit we're going to look at is the Grunt Stock Gun Hauler. This is the incredibly cool looking ship that you get in the box, and I love it. It is 10 wounds with a 5-up save. It's like a beefy mid-level monster, right? Bigger than, say, the Korgorath that comes in the starter set, not quite as big as the other ships in its class. Notable about this guy is a 12-inch move. That's pretty standard when it comes to these kind of larger flying things. You're going to see that a lot in this army. And this guy is armed to the teeth, okay? He has either a sky cannon or a drill cannon. We're going to touch on those two just a little bit, because realistically, those cannon choices are really up to your preference. The sky cannon wounds more reliably, but has less rend and does d6 damage. whereas the drill cannon wounds on a 3-up instead of a 2 for the Sky Cannon, has a rend of 3, but it only has a static 3 damage. So do you want reliability or do you want the chance of that nice d6? Also keep in mind that the drill has a chance for splash damage, meaning you roll a die and if it's a 6 to wound, units in 3 inches of your target also take d3 mortal wounds. For me personally, when I'm just inviting someone else to play, and if someone was to ask me, I'd say the drill cannon is my preferred one simply because I like consistency. I would rather bank on rend 3 and 3 damage with a chance to do extra stuff than I have terrible luck with d6 damage rolls. Never pans out for me. Again, it's about your preference on what cannon will fit your army better. And kind of rounding out his shooting attacks, he also has a guy with a rifle on it, much like the exact profile we saw from the rifles from the Thunderers. Now this ship has some really cool abilities. One is called Bomb Racks, and if an enemy charge ends within 1 inch, you choose a bomb, and on a 4-up it does one of these things. And what's cool is you get to choose whatever effect you would like. The first one is called Detonation Drills, which basically means the enemy that just charged you can't pile in an attack until everyone else has done it already. They have to be the last person to fight this activation. And the second one is the Grudge Settler Bombs, and this just immediately does d3 mortal wounds, except flying units are unaffected. Now, how you use these will depend on the enemy that you're fighting. For some of them, you need to get your licks in first, so you don't want them to attack before you. Of course, if you're fighting a flying enemy, the Grudge Settlers are absolutely useless because it doesn't affect them. So for those cases, you'll be focusing on the detonation drills. However, if it's a hero and they're about to die or something like that, there's no reason not to go for the mortal wounds. It's just easy to look at that and see that it's the better one. And what I'd like to just postulate to you is that you should never underestimate the power of activation manipulation. When you can dictate how your enemy fights, you can do a lot of great things on the battlefield. This is particularly true if you had multiple ships near this guy or multiple units of your army near this ship, and the thing that multi-charged you now has to wait to the end. That means everyone else in your army either gets to fight them or they can do like the Thunderers and back away out of combat and it's not even an issue. Point is, don't underestimate the detonation drills. But this guy has 2 more abilities, and he has a head full, which is you can re-roll run and charge rolls, but that turn you can't shoot. Now why would you use this? This thing's loaded the gills with guns. Well, if you need to grab an objective or go into an enemy territory as part of an objective for a battle plan, it is very useful to have this as an option. Not something I would worry about every single game, but definitely something to keep in your back pocket for those corner case moments. And the second thing is called the Escort Vessel, which, put quite simply, makes this guy a tank for another boat. If another sky vessel, that's not a gun hauler, takes a wound or a mortal wound in 3 inches of this model, on a 5-up, this guy gets hurt instead, so you basically act as a shield for other ships. And really what this guy is, he's a gunboat, much like the Venom from 40k, if you're familiar with that. He does supporting fire, great attacks, and really he's there to aid the bigger ships in what they do. If we're going to make this an analogy of Battleship from the game, like the Parker Brothers game or whatever, this guy is the smallest one. He's the destroyer with only 2 pegs of life on him. He bolsters the force, but he does not make up the bulk of it. He's great for claiming objectives, and again, flanking bigger ships, and when you combine this with the firepower of some of the other larger ships, you can potentially wipe things off the board very, very easily. Now the last unit in the set can be built one of 2 ways. It's the Sky Wardens or the Endrin Riggers. The box art, I think, describes building the Sky Wardens, but we're going to do a really deep dive into see which is really a better choice. No matter which way you split it, you get 12 inches of move, which is great because you can keep up with the ship that you just built. They have 2 wounds apiece with a 4-up save, which is a really great stat line with a 12-inch move, absolutely. And this is another unit that has a lot of weapon options. Keep in mind the options are the exact same whether you go with Sky Wardens or Endrin Riggers. All of these optional weapons, they all have a 24-inch range, hit on 4s, and they vary in terms of rend and damage is really where the variety comes from. And both these units, the Sky Wardens and the Endrin Riggers, do kind of the same thing but in different ways. They're both meant to be skirmishers, hit and run, shooting and melee type things where you get in there, do some damage. They're not supposed to be this strong, durable, invincible type unit, but a mobile gun platform that can get in there and mix it up in melee as well. So looking at them individually, how do the Sky Wardens do this? Well, their basic weapon, the one before any kind of upgrade, is a 9-inch pistol that does 1 attack at 3 up, rend 1. They have an ability called Sky Mines, which is if an enemy ends its charge in 1 inch, roll a die for each model in that unit. On a 6, it equals 1 mortal wound. Now, this is phenomenal against hordes, and not much else. If I get charged with a unit of, say, 30 demonettes, I'm going to wipe out some demonettes. There's just no way to avoid it. It's going to hurt them to charge me. If I get hit with a unit of 5 judicators, how many 6s am I really going to roll on 5 dice? Not a whole lot. So just kind of keep that in mind. It is exceptionally good for hordes, not much for anything else. And their second ability is called Timed Charges, and this allows them to, when they retreat, they roll a die. For every unit in 3 inches of where they were, on a 6, they take a mortal wound. Again, I don't like the idea of the randomness, right? You have a 14% chance of both of these abilities going off. The Sky Mind is great because it affects every model in the unit, whereas the Time Charges is just 1 mortal wound on every unit around you, again, on a 6. How many units are you really going to be engaged with? And the defining feature of their weapon loadout is the Sky Spike. This is a melee weapon. It comes with 2 attacks. It's a 4 up, 3 up, rend 1, and D3 damage. So actually a really good stat line for an attack coming from these little guys floating around. But let's compare that to the Endrin Riggers, which have far fewer special rules, but kind of some better base damage and stat line. Because their basic gun is a rapid fire rivet gun, which I just think sounds so cool. And it has 3 attacks, 3 up, 4 up, rend 1, damage 1. Okay, that's a lot more shots per dude, albeit at a slightly worse stat line. And they don't have any special rules like the Sky-Duardins do in terms of detonation charges or backing out of combat, nothing like that. But their special melee weapon is the Ethermatic Saw, and people love this thing. You get 1 attack, it's a 3 up, 2 up, rend 2, damage D3. That rend 2, damage D3 on a unit of multiple dudes is clutch. So which is better? Well, really what we're exploring is, it's a choice, right? Do you think that the special rules from the Sky-Duardins is greater than the higher rend on melee and more shooting attacks from the Endrin Riggers? Well, the special rules that you're giving up are really not so great. Again, against hordes, that first ability is really, really great. But if you get slammed by a big horde, that unit's going to evaporate regardless. And the one where you detonate a charge after you retreat, it's just not reliable enough. If it was on a 4-up, we'd be having a different conversation. So you're not really giving up a whole lot in terms of special rules for a much better weapon profile, both ranged and melee. So for that, I vote the Endrin Riggers. You get more attacks, higher quality melee. Again, both units have their uses, and they really do. I do think that there are great cases for Sky-Duardins. If you have a situation that you use them for to great success, leave it in the comments down below. I'd really love to see it. But in terms of building your first set of units to have the most useful build for kind of all coming things as you're a new player still learning the game, I do think the Endrin Riggers are probably going to be a better investment. If for nothing else, to be perfectly honest with you, they have better stat lines and they have less rules to memorize, and if you are new, you have enough to learn. And I think that's actually a huge vote in their favor. I am in favor of fewer things to memorize for new people. So that is all the units that you get, but let's put it all together and see if this is a good box. As always, I judge a Start Collecting box on 2 things. Does it convey the theme of the army, and does it provide a good launching point for that army if a new player were to walk up? Well, the answer to the first question, does it convey the theme of the army? Oh my gosh, yes. This is actually, I think, one of the best Start Collecting boxes that really embodies what this army is. It is phenomenal shooting, backed up by a lot of mobility that you wouldn't expect from Duardin, with some amazing looking models, and you're going to have a blast with them. To the second question, does it have a good launching point for the army? And that's a tough question. The fact of the matter is, other reviewers are correct. It needs a battle line unit. If you want to play in matched play, not for tournament's sake, but just for fun. I mean, my local group, we play open war cards, but with matched play list building guidelines. You're going to need battle line units. If for nothing else, you want the attacks that they offer at the price that they offer points-wise. That being said, in terms of being a good start to the army and in relation to introducing a player to the things that this army is going to do on a tabletop perspective. Not just a model collecting one like I talked about before, but like a actual learn how to function in this army. I would say it does really well. You're going to learn a lot of great concepts like how to kit out your units. You're going to learn about the duality of having extremely slow dudes and some very fast pieces like the Endrin riggers and the gun hauler. You need to learn how to balance the speeds of which your army can move at. And don't forget, things do change. Units are given the battle line word and taken away, so this could absolutely change. I wouldn't bank on it, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think that not including a battle line discredits this box in any way, because it's a massive savings in money, as well as giving you great thematic look of an army and a great introduction to how it will play when you get it kitted out. These are all great things for new players to learn early on. But fundamentally, you get a lot of great supporting pieces, but not the core of what an army is, and that is the big ships with transport capacity and your battle line units. And those are the things you need to fill out with your next purchases, which we'll get to now. An Ether Chemist is great. He can increase the shooting potential of one weapon type. So if you put him on, say, the Thunderers and you equip them all with their basic rifle, they all get to make an additional shot with that rifle. It's pretty fantastic. The Arcanaut Admiral is great because he adds some command abilities, and if you're a new player, that is a function of the game that you're going to need to get used to very, very quickly. If you are really set on playing matched play games, you're going to want 2 boxes of Arcanauts to fill up that battle line. Now, don't just think of this as being a requirement to be able to build a legal list. You also want them because they add more guns. More shooting is good for this army. You're going to want those things anyway. And really, my number one recommendation, and I even asked multiple KO players about this, the Sky Fleet Battle Force is on for sale right now, and it includes everything that you would want. It has a transport ship, the big guy, it has battle line units that you need, and it has the Admiral in there. It is arguably a much better place to start than this. However, I understand that people are picking up this box because of the price tag. If you can swing it, that Skyfleet Battle Force is the perfect place to expand this army. No questions asked. All the units that I talked about this box supports are in the Skyfleet. Your gun hauler will support the big old ship in there. The big ship can transport people, which supports all of the little guys running around on their feet with 4 inches. He'll get them to the fight. So it really is the best place to go next. I know it's a big price tag, but there's a lot in there and you will have hobby galore if you buy that guy. So kind of wrapping up my closing thoughts on this, it is a beautiful set of models at an unbeatable price. And if you bought this box and you're new, you made a good choice. It is a really cool army. And what you should do is enjoy your narrative games and Path to Glory and slowly build it up into a legal army. And don't be discouraged by a lot of the negativity you see online about it. It is a phenomenal value. You made a good choice monetarily and just army-wise. The Kharadron Overlords are a cool army. And if you are thinking about getting this as an expanding force to your Order army, or as diving into something completely new, what I would just say is factor in the additional things you need to buy to make this function before you just go out and grab it, right? Think about, seriously, do I want to spend 85 here, or do I just want to save up another paycheck and grab the Skyfleet Battle Force, which is phenomenal. And don't let the lack of battle lines scare you. Those are things that you can add all the time. Again, if you're expanding your Order army, you probably have some battle line in there to make it legal until you can get some more units. And frankly, all the things in this box, you're going to want eventually anyway. You're going to want a little gun hauler to take some wounds for your big guy. Endrin riggers are always going to be good. The Thunderers are just great. If you're thinking of buying for the future, it's a great box. Why not? Because no matter whether you're new or you're expanding from another army, the most important things to getting your value out of this box is just being a smart consumer and planning your purchases. And above all, you need to play this army because you like it, not because it has the best starter box. And like I said in the beginning, if you like this army, there's no better place. It exemplifies every single thing about it and you're going to love it. So friends, those are my thoughts on the Kharadron Overlords Start Collecting box. And pretty soon I'll be having that Stormcast Eternal Vanguard one up as well. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.